We have been getting better. There are a couple of things that are a little bit better. I want to start in 1985. And if you remember 1985, Back to the Future was a thing. We had Teddy Ruxpin just kind of setting the stage. In 1985, the United States government released the NIST Green Book as part of the Rainbow series. And if you go into this document and you search for the word days, and you go to the second instance of days, you come up with this little nugget of guidance. Where they say L is set for 6 months and 12 months, P is set for 1 in 1 million, acceptable probability of guessing the password, and R is set at 8.5 guesses per minute, guess rate possible with 300 baud service. 300 baud. Now, if you're a kid and you're not a graybeard like us, you remember seeing in movies where like the modem's like, that's what we're talking about, right? War game style attacking. At 8.5 guesses per minute, you would get 12,000 guesses per day. All right. Now, if you scroll down, they come up and they were worried about the Russians back then and how long it would take for the Russians to break into passwords. And they came up with the table of maximum lifetime in months and the lengths for passwords and whether or not using a 26 character alphabet or 36. And a whole bunch of organizations went with 8-character passwords. And that's where we were in 1985. What happened with a lot of compliance standards is they continued to take the guidance of the previous standard and make it their standard, and then the guidance of the previous standard and make it their standard. And then it carried forward to where we still see organizations to this day using 8-character passwords. Now, just recently, this changed. So if you Google and you look at password length requirements for PCI, payment card industry, credit cards, a standard, it's going to change. They're going to update it. I know that they're going to update it, but up until like about a month ago, it was 7 characters. That was the standard for PCI for years. And there's this thing called the PCI mafia, where whenever I talk about this, like I'd have people come up to me at conferences and be like, dude, you don't want to make PCI mad, man. Those guys, they'll come after you. And I'm like, I don't know, like a bunch of geeks from PCI from, Discover Card coming after me, but 7 characters. So basically what they did is they looked at the standard in like 1985 and they said, oh, no, it's too onerous. We're going to take that back a character. Now, like I said, they're going to finally fix it, but I want to just drive home. This is a compliance standard that is just now fixing it today, where you compare this to like Teen Vogue password recommendations. If you look at Teen Vogue has 2-factor as a recommendation. And they also talk about strong passwords. And I always like to argue with people whenever they're like, well, our complexity standard says this. I like to bring up the Teen Vogue standard and say, could we at least meet the Teen Vogue standards for 2-factor authentication and password complexity? So whenever you're looking at trying to meet the minimum, hackers everywhere would like to say thank you. The Chinese would like to say wawaling, and they would like to thank you as well as they break into your systems and say ni hao ma, which I know I'm butchering. My Chinese is horrible, but that's kind of one of the things that I think is important for people to understand, that you can't just look at the compliance and say, well, there's nothing in our audit and compliance that requires this, and really kind of unspool it all the way back to 1985 and say, are we sticking to a standard that's like, 30 years, 40 years old? And that's terrifying.
Wow. Bill, just curious, you have a lot of conversations every day about passwords, password management. What do you hear out there? Is there still pushback? You're seeing it through the lens of an MSP, typically, some corporate clients too, but is still pushback on, my company's not going to do that. It's too complicated.
All day, just got back from the show in DC, right? So you and I were just there, this past couple of days, and those exact comments, are like, yeah, I know we should probably do it. You get that, like, they understand, they recognize, they know, they're like, yeah, we got to do that,
right?
And that's, it's like it's funny you mentioned this, but I had this conversation on the way home with my wife, and she was trying to, get into a certain thing in the car on the way home for work, and she didn't have the password for it. And it was, kind of prompting her. And so she goes into notes on her iPhone and it looks up her list of and I just went, oh my God, you do realize I work for a cybersecurity company, right? And that is honestly, that is the attitude
Right.
that is out there, you know, and they take it jokingly and stuff like that, but I don't know that enough people are taking password hygiene seriously. And you know, I think there was a Verizon study that was done just last year, and it's like, you know, 90% of Windows breaches are because the person breached his privilege, and 80% of those compromises are passwords.
Right. Right.
You know,
Yeah.
so yeah, passwords they make up the majority of the reason why you get breached.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you guys do a lot with privileged access management, right? And that's one of those things like post exploitation, you know, like you can say that Steve is using the exact same password for a system that he's surfing the internet to access the domain controller, to access customers, to access the database. And we see that constantly. And I think it's interesting, you know, it's not sexy, right? We've been complaining and fighting passwords and trying to do better as long as I've been in the industry, which is now 22 years. And I just absolutely find it fascinating that I'm still having these conversations, right? But if you come out with like a new product, I think in the industry, it's like, well, we're going to do container blockchain security. It's just dollar bills, y'all. Like the VC funding people are there just raining money on you because it's the new hotness. But this is core. This is fundamental.
John, you mentioned PAM, you mentioned how, moving laterally. Can you just walk everybody through that? There are some people I can already see on this call, which is awesome, that do know this kind of stuff, but a lot of people don't. Talk to us about, spear phishing, escalating privileges, moving laterally, and how like PAM is coming into vogue, like why cyber insurance now is all of a sudden saying, hey, you need to start thinking about PAM, or we won't cover you without PAM.
So there's a couple of different things, right? And I'm going to demonstrate a couple. I'm going to share my screen again. Let's go here.
And oh, by the way, if you want to pepper in one of your favorite subjects in here about deceptive controls, I'm more than willing to.
The what? The CIS controls?
No, deception.
I could throw some deception in there as well.
Yeah.
All right. So what I'm going to show you here is this is all available online. These are actually the labs that I use in our MSP class and my pay what you can classes. So it's right up here. It's in GitHub. You can pull all this down. So I'm not doing anything that people just can't pull down on their own. But I want to show you a couple of quick things that I think are like really terrifying to showing you how an attacker goes from just gaining access to a system and then how they can move laterally and how they can do it relatively easily in an organization, right? So the first one that I want to show you is, let's go ahead and let's show you a tool called Responder, which a lot of people don't understand how easy it is to actually do these types of attacks, right? So imagine that I'm on a computer, right? So I'm on a computer in a Windows environment with hundreds or thousands of other Windows computer systems. One of the things that Microsoft created a long time ago is called link local multicast name resolution. So whenever your system tries to resolve something in DNS, if DNS is available, you can say, what's www.google.com? It'll say, here's the IP address. It'll recursively look that up for you and get you the answer. But what happens if DNS doesn't exist? And I usually tell this long joke about Bill Gates and the people at Redmond doing cocaine and running around crazy saying, oh my God, DNS is down. And they developed a protocol called link local multicast name resolution, another one called NetBIOS name service. And then there's another protocol called web proxy auto detection that I'm not going to get into right now. So the way that this particular attack works is you simply run Responder on a network. And post-exploitation, we can do this in a variety of different ways. I'm just going to go ahead and fire this up real quick. CD into opt responder, capital R. There we go. And then I'm going to run it. That's literally all an attacker needs to do. And this is all written in Python, so it's portable from Linux and onto Windows as well. And what it does is it automatically poisons any request for LLM&R, which is a broadcast request. So a system that is compromised will shout out to every other computer system on the network, hey, does anybody know where google.com is? You mistype Google. And if any of those systems have that cached answer, it will give it to them. But I'm an attacker. And if I see any request, I can redirect the victim back to me. Okay. So they can come right into my system. And I have all of these servers. I have a web server, HTTPS server. I have an SMB server, Kerberos server, SQL, FTP, IMAP, POP3, SMTP, DNS, and LDAP, all waiting. And as soon as somebody comes to me, I basically have them authenticate. So if somebody were to mistype an address, okay, like if they were to try to go to, as soon as they do that and they try to resolve an address and they fat finger it, I'm going to get an error here in a second. It's going to pop up, hopefully, but it doesn't matter about the error. There we go. Windows couldn't find it, which is fine because I was able to intercept the password hash, specifically the net NTLM v2 password hash, simply by being on the same network segment as the victim's computer system. And some of these attacks, if I launch it with WPAD, which I shut off for this example, but WPAD, any system that tries to surf to the internet will try to find a computer with the name WPAD for web proxy auto detection and will come to my computer to get a proxy auto config file. And I can redirect them through me and then I can intercept their passwords. So this becomes just like a devastating attack on an environment. And when you're talking about like controls, we often find this on administrators' computer systems where the administrators build their own Windows system from scratch, group policy doesn't apply, and then we can totally just intercept their password hashes and crack their password hashes. Or the other thing we can use is tools like NTLM Relay X to relay those password hashes onto other computer systems. So this is one of those things I call it forever day. This is a protocol. It wasn't until I think late last year that Microsoft finally started shipping Windows 10 ISOs with this disabled. Every other ISO that's out there has this enabled by default. And I would say a huge number of our organizations that we are testing are running this. And it's completely unnecessary. It more than likely is not going to break anything in your environment. It's just running. And now I can grab that password hash, I can relay it, I can then crack it, and I can gain access to other people's computer systems. So John, does that make sense? Yeah, go ahead.
It makes huge sense. I'm just curious, when you get into an organization and you're going through, you have a scope of work defined, and then you come to the, whether it's the CISO or C-suite, and you're presenting this type of stuff, and what is the reaction? And I'm sure there's a multitude of them because you deal with, sometimes very large organizations. What's the reaction? How do you work through, oh, we still want to do it this way. We've always done it this way. Or, again, MSPs, if they're on here, there are, again, organizations as well, direct organizations, but like everybody has to sell, whether you're on this call and you're an IT professional, security professional selling your corporation, whether you're an MSP selling an end customer. Walk us through some of those scenarios, if you would.
So the first thing is things like this are super easy to shut down. It's not that hard. So it's not like they can argue and say, well, we use that. They don't, right? Mm-hmm. It's just more of an awareness game. And if you're an MSP, I think that this is one of those things that we're talking about. Cyber deception should be going into our MSP class, I think this week it goes. And then also my intro to pen testing class is going in. And if you're an MSP, this is a golden opportunity for your organization to start selling security as a service to your customers, right? You talked about insurance. It isn't just an issue of doing, secure day-to-day operations, but now you can start offering additional services to your customers to bring them in line with compliance. And I think what I'm basically saying is this allows MSPs to get to the point where they can start competing in the security space. And that's something that I desperately think we need, because so many firms out there, they completely ignore the entire small to medium business segment because you can't make as much money as a Fortune 100 company. So it really opens up those opportunities for MSPs to start offering additional services to their customers. And I think that that's absolutely critical. Also, for internal to MSPs, make sure you don't have this stuff running. Because me as an attacker, an MSP is a gift. You break into an MSP and then you get access to all of their customers. And if you're an evil attacker, that is just like a huge multiplier that just makes your life so much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool, John. Let's go into the top 5 password attacks that'll kill you from both. First, if you can walk us through those.
So we talked about password reuse, and that's where administrators or even standard users reuse their password everywhere they go, right? Once we get into, like, if we can do this LLM&R attack and it's against an administrator, and I just cracked this password, you can see it's ADHD is the user ID. It was designed to be cracked really, really, really fast. So don't want to see that password. But if somebody's reusing that password in other places, it makes it super easy for me to take that access from the one place that I do have access to and then leverage it to gain access to other resources. So that's number one, password reuse. If we're in an environment where they're reusing the same passwords, and then there's also shared passwords, this is nuts. Like post-exploitation, we can run tools that'll automatically find the word password in a file name or password inside of the file. And it'll bring all those documents to me. And I find spreadsheets where the administrators are like, you know, PCI enclave jump host password, and it's in an Excel spreadsheet. This happens constantly in the industry. It's like it happened at Target, also happened at Sony, and those aren't exceptions. That is the rule. And there's better ways to do that. Like Excel should not be your password management solution. It just shouldn't be. So that password reuse is huge. The other thing, I'm going to share a different thing here. Go back to my browser. What do we got here?
While you're doing that, John, Bill,
Yeah,
do you while you're bringing that, Bill, do you see, or do you still like Excel being, you know, the mother of password management in some of the companies you're talking with?
Yeah. I see Excel. I see people put it in notes. I see people, I mean, a lot of people aren't even using built-in password managers that, you know, whatever their platform, whether you're a Mac and it comes with keychain, or you're using, you know, Windows to store passwords or whatever the case is. But yeah, I still see people like Excel's files, they're texting them, they're putting them in Slack, they're coming across Teams. So yeah, they're everywhere. Password it's just amazing where, you know, where I've seen passwords actually shared out to.
Sure. This is a great site, John. Talk to us about this.
So this is by Troy Hunt. And this is amazing. What Troy is doing is he's collecting breach data and he's consolidating it. And you can see if your email is in that breach data. And it's just crazy, right? Like, you look at the largest breaches, some people have heard of them, you know, like Facebook or MySpace or Collection One, but there's a bunch in there that people just aren't aware of. The recently added kind of cracked me up a little bit. Brand new tube accounts, strip chat accounts, which is weird. I didn't even know, one, that was a thing, two, that they had 10 million users, and three, that they were compromised. But you have these accounts that are constantly being breached all the time. And I think this, I hate to sell fear, uncertainty, and doubt, but I think that, you know, when we're putting the fear of an angry God into somebody, if you can put in your email in this and you see if your email address has been pwned, look at this. This is my personal Gmail account. Cove, data enrichment exposure from PDL, Dropbox, Gravatar, House, Lead Hunter, LinkedIn, scraped data, MGM Resorts, MySpace. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm old. Quinn Street, like, it isn't just like, if you have a compromise somewhere out there, you have been compromised. And your organization, as far as passwords and hashes, you will probably have almost every single person in your organization has a breach somewhere with their personal accounts. And if they're reusing the same password at work, I'm coming straight in. We're coming straight into this. But that gets into the next type of attack, is password stuffing. If I can get someone's password, I can then use that password to try to gain access. So if I find it over here, I can then use it over there. So if I find it and have I been pwned, go to that breach. Now I go to your company, hit the VPN, and I walk straight in. And once again, I normally wouldn't talk about our customers, but Colonial Pipeline, they testified this in front of Congress and they outed me. So that's great. But that is what got them. Something as simple as a password breach someplace else, and the attackers reusing that password was able to shut down oil and gas to the eastern seaboard of the United States for like a few days. That's horrifying.
Yeah. Wow. 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 John, password spraying. Talk to us a little about that, how you guys use that when you're and not there's tools out there, right, that aren't too hard to use and gain access to. Fair?
Absolutely. And this is, once again, I'm just using my labs because I can talk and copy and paste, and I'm getting really, really good at that. We have an entire lab dedicated to that topic, dealing with password spraying. And I want to show you what that one looks like. And the way that that works is a lot of people like reuse passwords. And what I mean by that is if we're a large organization, let's say 10, 20,000 users, there's a very strong possibility that a percentage of those people are going to use a password that's the same. They don't get together and like, what are we going to make the password today, folks? It's just humans tend to think the same. And what we do in this lab is we actually have a wonderful little thing where we generate 200 users that have passwords. And then we show people how to use this tool called, it's called local password spray. There's a variant of it called domain password spray as well. And what this tool does is it automatically will automatically download all of your users by using net user space / domain. And then it will try a password against each one of those users. And the reason why this particular attack works is because it stays underneath the wire of the lockout policy. So here you can see I'm running invoke local password spray with the password of winter 2020. And it's going to dump all of the users, and it's going to try that password against every single user. And you're going to see them pop up here in green here in a couple of seconds. So there you can see, this is how the tool works. And this is a very similar tool to what we use in our pen tests. This is a very similar tool to what we see attackers use all the time. And you can see that we've got a bunch of accounts. We've got Christopher with the password of winter 2020. Same thing with Dennis, Gregory, Jack, Jerry, and Michael. Now, so an organization could say no dictionary words, but I think that most of our listeners, if you want to type into chat, people are just going to change their password from winter 2020 to winter with a 1 for an I, or they're going to use a 3 for an E. They're going to do some type of leet speak substitution. Now, this, like I said, is just one of those ways that we move laterally to try to escalate our privileges. And a lot of organizations, they just cannot detect this. They can if you have like UEBA or some honeypots or something like that. But this is just a deadly effective post-exploitation technique to continue to escalate our privileges throughout an environment.
Cool. All right. Talk Kerber roasting with us.
So Kerber roasting is interesting. It's actually a technique that was created by Tim Medine of Red Siege Security. And ironically enough, let me just go into a Kerber roasting attack website. I don't have any labs on Kerber roasting. But what happens, and I can post this in the chat for everybody. This is a CrowdStrike. There's one that had a really, really good kind of breakdown. Let's just go to the MITRE attack technique matrix. There we go. This is awesome. All right. So whenever you're looking at service accounts in an environment, and I'm going to post this in the chat for everyone. There you go. It's weird because in Active Directory with Kerberos, you can request the ticket on the service principal name associated with the service account. And what Tim Medine identified is that the password hash for these service accounts are actually inside of that ticket when you request it. And you can use tools like Rubius that will extract that password hash, and then you can brute force and you can crack that. Now, that doesn't sound that terrifying, but where it gets terrifying is any user account can request these service accounts tickets. Any user account, regardless of their privileges, can request these tickets. And then you can reverse and you can start cracking the service logon accounts for these as well. So this is one of those attacks, once again, that a lot of people just aren't aware of. And like Felicia King just said, I hope everyone's rolling their Kerberos tickets monthly at least. And this is the beautiful thing. If you try to reset them all, they're still valid. You have to reset them 3 times to get them to completely reset. When we're talking golden ticket attacks at that point, that's where an attacker can actually grant themselves a Kerberos ticket that never expires. So this is another attack. And what's interesting about this, like I said, whenever Tim Medine first found this, he actually submitted it to security conferences like DEF CON and Black Hat, got rejected from all of these different conferences. And then finally he sent it into DerbyCon before DerbyCon went away. And, you know, we're both good friends with Dave Kennedy, and Dave Kennedy, I remember when he was reading this, he's like, excuse me, what? So what this basically means is your most sensitive accounts, your service accounts, can be readable by anyone in the environment. We can reverse them and we can crack those password hashes. So that means when we're looking at password complexity and security, it isn't just for users. It has to go to administrator accounts. It has to go to service accounts as well.
Finish us off, John, with exploitations of Windows protocols and passwords.
Yeah, and that goes back to the link local multicast name resolution, right? We already kind of showed that if somebody's reusing their password in an environment, we can definitely take advantage of that, and we can totally just, hit those accounts. But if we go back to LLM&R, what we have right here, and I actually went through and cracked the password. This is probably, I think, one of the biggest weaknesses of really when you're looking at security on Windows. When you look at, let's go to a Unix password hash real quick. If I go to a Unix password hash, if I dump Etsy Shadow, I get this. And what this is a password hash for a SHA-512 password. I know that because it says $6. It has a 64-bit salt that's randomized at the front of it. And then after it is the password hash after it's gone through 10,000 rounds of encryption using SHA-512, moving the salt from the front to the back, to the front, to the back, front to the back, front to the back, front to the back, front to the back, 10,000 times. And then it base64 encodes that password hash and stores it. That's how Unix password hashes are stored. Okay. If you look at how Windows password hashes are stored, and I can show you that here. We go to my tools and we go to Hashcat. Here is a SAM file from a Windows computer system. What's stored here is the landman hash and the NT hash. The landman hash, you can see it's the same. It's blank because it's a modern Windows computer system. But the way the landman hash is stored is it takes the password that you put in, it generates a key, and it encrypts the string KGS exclamation point at pound prompt $. And then it's just a straight des encryption, and that's what it stores. But it splits the password into 2 7-character strings and converts it all to uppercase. It's bad. Really bad. Like you can crack every landman password hash in less than an hour. Bad. That's not good. The NT password hash back here is better. Okay. The NT password hash is a straight MD4 encryption of the password hash, of the password itself. That's better, right? It's not converting it all to uppercase. It's not splitting it, but it still ain't great. If you look at like Linux passwords go through 10,000 rounds of encryption to do one comparison. Windows does 1 round of encryption. So that means that cracking Windows passwords is orders of magnitudes greater than it is on Linux. But wait, there's more. The other thing about Windows password hashes is they're sent more or less in the clear. And this is something a lot of people don't understand. Like clear text authentication is bad. Everyone talks about don't use anything, to stay away from Telnet, stay away from FTP. But if you're in a Windows environment and you're using landman authentication or net NTLM authentication or net NTLM v2 authentication, the password hash is treated as the password. Let me say that again. When you're in a Windows environment, it treats the landman or the NT password hash as the password. So if I'm authenticating to a remote Windows computer system, my hash will be sent wrapped in this authentication, which I'll describe here in just a couple of seconds. And it'll unwrap it at the other system, and it'll do a hash comparison of what it has on file with what you sent it to make a determination as to whether or not you authenticate. And that authentication is sent in the clear. In this net NTLM v2 password hash, we have ADHD as the user account. We have 1122334455667788 is a 16-byte hash as a challenge that is sent. And then here is the net NTLMv2 password hash. You can reverse this. This entire protocol is known. You can reverse it. You can pull out the password hash, and then you can crack it relatively easily on Windows systems. Further, up until 2008, you could reflect the authentication back to the system and authenticate. Microsoft shut that down, but you can still reflect this password hash and authentication to another computer using tools like NTLM Relay X, and that still works. And that's all. That's Windows, folks. That's how it works. When you're in a domain, there's going to be Kerberos authentications. There's going to be tickets for accessing resources. But when we're looking at Windows to Windows authentication using Landman, Net NTLM, or Net NTLM v2, that's how it works here. So absolutely insane. So this just becomes, once again, I'm hoping that people can kind of see, as somebody that does offense, like, this is the stuff. Like, seriously, if you are not protecting your passwords, you're not randomizing your passwords for sensitive resources, you're not using centralized password management and watching the passwords that people have, that's a gift to any attacker.
John, I'm going to jump to Bill for a second for interest of time. And Bill, I'd love to get a sense of, because I want to talk about the defensive side of this, packaging it up. John, I'm going to come back to you on defending against all these attacks. But Bill, we're a lot of buzz out there right now in the insurance industry. You get conversations, I think, daily, multi-conversations a day, whether it's password management, but certainly Pam, out of, all of a sudden, we go from 5 questions and your, heart, can you get a heartbeat for a cyber insurance policy to now 10 pages. What are you hearing about, right, John? What are you hearing about Pam? And I hope you can show us a little bit about it. Why is it so in vogue right now?
Yeah, definitely. So I think I was popping the chat there. I've had 3 conversations this morning about it already. Each one of them was, and the last guy actually asked me before this call, he goes, "Hey, I'm doing a bunch of these cybersecurity insurance questionnaires. I've done 7 of them in the past couple of weeks. And does this tick the box for the PAM requirement?" And they're not even really understanding what exactly that is. And so the privilege management part of this is really critical, because there are and John can attest to this, right? There are just so many poorly written applications that literally are, because Windows security can be a little bit in the way, they just write their applications to, go around that. And the way they do it is they just say, "Give me local admin rights and my application will run." And our techs go, "Okay, cool, here you go." And now everybody's a local admin. Yep. And, those are the things that we're really, really, really trying to avoid. Here's the basics of it, right? And here's the most frustrating part. John, you can corroborate, with this as well, I believe. But Windows says this, right? They say, first point of security is Windows UAC, right? User access control. User access control grants you access to SCM. SCM is what services and everything else gets installed in. There are accounts, we won't talk about those today, like local assistant, that go around all of Windows privilege, right? Yep. The built-in Windows administrator account actually goes around UAC, while your normal Windows account, even if I put you in the same admin group as the built-in administrator, does not grant you the same administrator rights.
Yep.
And so one of the things we'll do is they grant you local admin access, and that allows you to basically, do whatever the heck you want and put your credentials in, and Windows will go put its stamp of approval on it and let you fly. Yep. So Windows says this. Microsoft, I should say. Microsoft says, 1, you need to turn user access control all the way up on DIM 3, 4, right? That's supposed to be set. Microsoft also says your best mitigation strategy is that nobody should be an administrator. And you're like, okay, cool. Nobody's supposed to be an admin, and I turn up user access control and security. So when I need to be an admin, how do I do that again? And Windows goes, figure it out. So there's no solid way to it built into the operating system, right? There's no way for me not have an admin account and get around Windows security. Mm-hmm. So we give everybody administrator accounts. And then what else do? We share those passwords with everybody in our organization. So, so they have access to go do admin level work. What we've done with this particular solution, and if it's okay to share.
Yeah, just share it out. Yeah, absolutely. Give us a quick overview.
Just a quick thing, right?
Yeah.
So what we need to do is that the right screen?
I can see a Mac screen right now.
Oh
no, Windows. Wait a minute.
Windows, yeah.
I see a Mac screen and a Windows 11
and
screen.
a Windows screen. Yeah. That's
completely freaked me out there for a minute, man. So,
totally.
Like, I don't know what a virtual machine is. It just completely freaked out.
Right. So one of the problems and challenges that we have, right, is that you need to be an administrator to do anything. And so ideally what we want to do is we want to abide by Microsoft best practice, right? So obviously all the password stuff that John's been talking about, but we also want to remove admin capabilities from everybody. And I do mean everybody. And this is really hard to get this past your people who have admin rights. They do not want to let those go, and they will go kicking and screaming.
Well, so, and Bill, isn't this just a quick note, just so people really understand, there's what the best practices are, and then there's reality. And the reality is there's going to be people that need to have this level of access. That's the reality.
Right. And so we want to, what we're trying to do and then with this particular, we're using a software SaaS platform to solve the problem of being able to grant privilege when privilege is needed, which is part of following, if you're looking at CIS controls and stuff like that, it's part of your IAM strategy. PAM is a part of that, password management, control 5, control 6. If you review those, part of these processes are like just-in-time access for privilege when you need to grant that. And the idea is that controlling the use and access of privilege and granting for the instant so that nobody has access to what I've coined a persistent admin account. The way that we operate today in the real world is I have Bill Morgan, the admin account, and I have Bill Morgan, the user account, right? So anytime I need to privilege, I just use my admin account. But that account is always persistent. It's always an admin. It has a password in front of it. And I think John pretty much just, shot all over, every way to crack a password possible. But if you don't have privilege in the first place, right, that is another line of defense.
Well, and every time I try to move, like all of that, I'm moving laterally to try to find privileged accounts. And if I don't have those privileged accounts, I'm trapped.
Exactly. And that's what we're trying to do is how can I grant privilege and achieve my level of Windows security without owning an administrator account? And that's where a tool like this is AutoElevate, for example. What we do is we act as a UAC interrupt, where UAC is going to try to start, and then we're going to basically step in and interrupt that UAC request as soon as the internet catches up here. So, and what that does is it allows us to be able to say, we're not going to let you run anything UAC related. So did somebody change my computer? And we also, there's other thing too, is we also want to make sure that everybody is set to standard user, so operating appropriately. And then we want to make sure that everybody is also set with the proper UAC settings. So when we look here, we want to be able to make sure that, because this a lot of times the things we don't even know. We don't know where UAC is turned on or where it's turned off. And a lot of times we don't know who's been granted local privilege or admin accounts and who hasn't.
And Bill, this is huge. If I could just interject for an MSP with multiple, a multi-tenanted view across all customers adding, computers, co-managed environments, on and on and on. And I've asked the big MSPs, security first MSPs, you got Felicia out there who's awesome, and she'll just tell a customer the way it is. But some MSPs, in terms of a lot of MSPs with customers, and especially co-managed, they don't have that level of authority, as an example, to do that. So this is an amazing way to be able to audit that very quickly.
Correct. So that's what we want to do, is we want to make sure we're auditing where these are not where they're supposed to be, where people are still operating with admin capabilities. And ultimately, we want to be able to go in and essentially revoke that. so that they don't have the ability to do that. I mean, by running a consistent policy to always remove. So even if somebody were to go add a local admin account, having some process or system that immediately revokes that admin capability and puts them back down to standard user. That's the Windows permissions is a whole other challenge, right? Like granting people access to the local admin group doesn't exactly give you admin, but when you grant somebody an admin account type and you put them in the local group, now they're actually an admin. And if you demote them, then we can take away those rights. And that's essentially what we're trying to do with AutoElevate. But the idea here is that if we want to be able to, let's run this program here really quick. I'm going to authenticate. This is another way, 2FA, mobile authentication, stuff like that. These are all things you can do to help protect yourself. So in this case, I'm run my app and I want to put this machine into a mode. So on this machine, I'm just a standard user. I have no admin capabilities whatsoever. I do not have an admin account to this machine, any of that. But what we want to do is we want to be able to do the same thing for our customer, our engineering teams, right? We want to remove their admin accounts. We want to make them standard users, and we want to grant privilege when privilege is actually needed. So in this case, if I needed to go access the registry, for example, so maybe I'm doing desktop support, or maybe I'm on a server doing something, I run this as an administrator. What we can do is we can essentially intercept that particular, I think my VM has died.
Got it.
Demo gods.
Bill,
gods.
Blame Apple.
Bill, if we could, also, how much do you have left? Because I just want to make sure, because we do have
yeah.
I was just going to say, for everybody that sat in here, we do have a winner. We want to, declare a winner, or at least tell somebody we're going to have some. John, I want you to be able to tell about the training you're doing. Bill, if it comes back up, by the way, let us know so we can show it. And if you guys could all hang in there just a little bit, the good folks here at CyberFOX will pick a winner. Maddie, I don't know if you and Mark are going to do that, but John, talk to us about what's going on in cyber training, the challenges, whether you're a mid-market company, and whether you're an end customer, an MSP. Why is cyber training so difficult to get at? And I think we all know the expense, but how are you changing that?
So the expense is probably the biggest thing. If you look at the security community as a whole, the security community pretty much ignored and abandoned, as far as I can tell, the MSP community, being blunt here. And there's a number of reasons why that happened. I think one of the biggest reasons was in the security community, we tended to gravitate towards very large corporations that had funds and they have money and they can buy us the toys that we want, basically. And that's where the security community went. The MSP space basically was driven by a race to be who could be the most cost effective. And if you're trying to implement security, trying to do security training, that's a cost driver for an organization. So a tremendous, huge chunk of the security training community was just basically like, nope, we ain't going to do it. That's number one. Number two, time. You're taking an analyst, you're taking a technician out of play to train them. You can't send them away for a week. That's lost opportunity costs. And, I didn't quite understand the level of this problem until I actually met Andrew, everybody. And I started hanging out with this, and there was two things hit me. Actually three things. Number one, this entire community of people is just like duct tape, baling wire, and genius engineering, right? You make what you can make and you get it together and you do your job. That's number one. Number two, the other thing that absolutely floored me is this is the front lines of computer security. I've been working in Fortune 500 companies for years. The MSP space, they're the ones that are battling ransomware. They're the ones that are battling a lot of nation state attacks. And once again, they're doing it with duct tape and baling wire, and they're doing a great job. So for me, the final thing was working with Andrew is really trying to make sure, how do we meet this space? And we started up some training. It's at antisiphon.com/MSP. And we basically, it's every class that I teach available. So it's like right now it's going to be intro to SOC core skills, intro to security, intro to cyber deception, intro to pen testing. And it's just like a low monthly cost just to get people through, this, because honestly, it's more about how do we actually find a way to protect the industry as a whole than it is just making as much money as we possibly can. But it's weird. This whole MSP space is just so cool. And it's like something I've never been in, and anything we can do to help. And I just posted it in the chat. I guess I shared it out to hosts and panelists. So we'll do this. There we go. Now it's out to everyone. And then
John,
even if you can't afford it, we do pay what you can as well. Go ahead. And then I've got to get rolling.
Yeah. Can you just close out showing anti-siphon? And Bill, if you have yours, I'll hang with you for those that can still hang. But just show anti-siphon real quick, because I think this is important, because we do have non-MSPs on the call too. So whether you're MSP or you just want to get, on-demand live training, or so take it away there, John. In terms of
so this is our training, and we're trying to put as much as we can into our training and on demand. Like, we've got a huge catalog. Not all of these classes are in the MSP. All of mine are in the MSP. But we have everything for cloud security, initial access, Linux forensics, packet decoding, you name it. We're shooting to try to be as affordable as we possibly can with all of this. And with that, I do have to go. I gave you all a link to the MSP training. You all can get there. And we really, really just appreciate you guys hanging out with us this afternoon. And I'm
awesome,
on,
John.
I'm on to another webcast.
I know you got to go to the next one.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks, pal. Bill, we'll hang for a second. Maddie, let us know what you want to do about, pulling a winner. Bill, do you have, I know that we're at the top of the hour here. Folks, just in chat, could you let us know, can you hang for just a few minutes more? If Bill has his stuff up, and if you can, just maybe a wire. Yeah. Okay, cool. Just a quick few minutes. And then Maddie, let us know what you want to do in terms of pulling the winner for that year of John Strand's training, which is, it's over a $700 value with labs and everything. So Bill, take it away. And thanks for those hanging in there with us.
Yeah. So, all right. So we'll say restart tonight for that. Windows updates getting in the way a little bit, but yeah, so there wasn't any resources available on my machines, on my cloud virtual. It was Microsoft having fun with me, I guess. But so the idea here is to basically, we want to try to take control and control the privilege conversation when we need to. So for example, if I'm trying to download something and install this application, like by the way, this application is completely terrible. I know it's terrible. I did it on purpose, right? I went to some UK mirror site, downloaded it, because this is what our people do. And if they have local, now this is a bad executable, right? Just to make that clear to everybody. If this person had local admin rights, they would be able to go past UAC, they would install this package, and it would do a lot of what John actually said, as part of his conversation. But what we're trying to do is control that. So in this case, I've sort of popped up a message here, and it's like, hey, this particular action requires admin authority, which obviously this account does not have. And then we're going to kind of, as a way to give the opportunity to say yay or nay to privilege, right? And this is a good way to stop a lot of foothold attacks and stuff like that. So when I look at this particular request that's coming in, you can see that I'm trying to run this program right here. It's going to give me details about what's happening and where it's coming from. What is the details about the application itself? And then what's it trying, do I have my basic, at least your basic Windows security actually here? And then, what about this publisher? So in this case, this publisher is not verified. It indicates there's some potential malware here. So, in this case, I'm not liking it at not even a little bit, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and say, no, you can't do that.
Got it.
And yes, those alerts. So I saw, Michael, I see your question. Absolutely. I have completely customized all of these interactions. And that's part of what you want to do too. So here's the other part of why we tend to give away so much access is that in an IT support company where I have people paying me every month, right? If I irritate those people and those people get frustrated with me and my lack of giving them the ability to do things they think they should do, they're probably going to go find somebody else who's going to be a little more amenable to what they want. And then that's going to expose them against the greater good in their judgment, right? They're going to do that. So what we need to do is control the narrative with our end customer and provide them with an experience and let them understand what we're doing, how we're doing it, why they're seeing these messages, how long is it going to take. A lot of times it's time. People are, somebody put this like 5 seconds ago there, was like, time is your most precious commodity. If I have to spend 2 days arranging a Zoom session with you to type my password in so you can do a QuickBooks update, you're going to have a very unhappy customer. But or what do? You give them the ability to be local admins and then they don't bug you anymore. But now we've exposed that entire company. So how do I get away with your admin rights, but I still need to allow you to do your QuickBooks updates? And that's where like a PAM solution like this comes in, where if I've created a rule that says you're allowed to do something, then the system will go ahead and grant privilege. And to the end customer, it will look absolutely seamless like that. So it'll just happen. The customer will do their job. They'll be very happy, but they are not a local admin. And I've created a rule that's allowed that to occur in the background. And it was something that we didn't even see happen. There was a password and an admin account rotation literally in about 50 milliseconds, where the account is rotated, password changed, elevation granted, password changed, account rotated down to a standard user. And we can do the same thing with technicians. So we can grant them the ability to have administrator privilege when they need it, but not have a persistent admin account. This is what we were looking at a little bit earlier, was I'm now in technician mode. I'm still just a standard user account, but I really do have to get in the registry and I do need to make some changes. So I can run that as an administrator. I can grant an admin elevation. It happens instantaneously, and then it goes away. There's no admin account right now anymore, period. So now, but I can still get in, I can do what I need to do. And then more importantly, from a compliance standpoint, we are auditing all of those privilege access escalations. So anytime privilege is granted anywhere for anything at any time by anybody, I know what that is. It's completely recorded. And we need to know that so we know what people are getting access and using privilege for. And that's essentially, in a very quick 5 minutes, what the tool's doing.
Thanks for that. Okay. So, one, I appreciate everybody's time today. I know a lot of you stayed a little extra. Two, Maddie, thank you, Bill. Maddie, are you with us still? And or how are we going to choose somebody, or are we emailing them? Please let us know what we're doing there in terms of who's winning.
Hey, Andrew. Okay. So I am going to pick someone randomly from the chat. It looks like we have a Jim Cook still on with us.
Jim, are you there?
Yeah, if Jim is still here. Oh, perfect. Yep. I see him there.
Okay, cool.
Cool. So he is our first winner.
Okay. And so we have two winners. We have a $100 Amazon gift card. Yes. And we have also John's training for you.
All right. And so for our second one, we'll do here. Let's see. Do we have Alex Bellinger? Is he still on with us?
Paging Alex Bellinger.
Alex Bellinger, come to the chat, please. Alex Bellinger, come to the chat, please.
Uh-oh.
Alex is gone.
Might not be on.
As Alex. Nice one, Vince. Nice one.
All right, let's see. So if he isn't able to claim that, or if he wasn't in at the end of that, then we'll go ahead and pick another one. But for now, yeah, those are our two winners. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
Barry, you're dating yourself with that comment.
Well, again, thank you, everybody. Someone asked, is it recorded? Maddie, I'm assuming it is recorded, and will it be sent out type of thing afterwards?
Yep, we are recording, and it will be sent out to all attendees. So be looking forward to that.
All right, awesome. Hey, so really appreciate everybody hanging in there, and it was a pleasure, Bill, interviewing you and John, and wishing everybody a fantastic week. We'll look forward to seeing you all very soon. Take care.
Thanks so much,